Hey,
हाय सानिया।
hi Auric, how are you today?
ओ आज क्यों पूछ रही है? पिछली बार तो बोला ये मीनिंग क्वेश्चंस इसके ऊपर क्वेश्चंस नहीं पूछते हैं।
आज तेरी शक्ल देख के लग रहा है कि
आज आई एम अ लिटिल heartbroken. Somebody broke my heart.
oh,
Oh, not really. It's okay.
as if you did not break anybody else's heart.
Oh
ऐसे
yeah,
तो
I regret
पवित्र बना फिर रहा है जैसे
I regret doing all of those things, but yes, obviously. Sometimes it's breaking some. मतलब मेरा this इसलिए भी टूटा है because I did not prospectively break somebody else's heart, and you rationalize the whole relationship before it actually happens, and the whole
So what, you imagine stuff?
Oh yeah, you see. I read a very interesting post, which was the best calculation or maths that you can learn is to evaluate the future.
पता है यहीं पे we are freaking messing it up. We think कि this is the early 20s versus the late 20s thing, right? This is what happens. This is one of the things which happens. If we were younger, we wouldn't be thinking all of this, which is, I'm not saying it is a good thing, but then sometimes this sort of हम कुछ ज़्यादा ही rationalize कर
Yeah,
ले रहे
so
हैं.
let
This
me-
is now working against us.
Correct. So let me just finish. The best math or calculation that you can learn is to calculate the cost of future or the consequences, like the cost of
तुम
decisions.
कितने भी consequences अगर कर लो, but you will still, I don't know, you cannot. It's not that simple. This is not your maybe career. Obviously, you can
नहीं, पता है
plan.
क्या? So I'll tell you.
Personal relationships you can't.
When I was younger, and when we are younger, we're generally not thinking about the consequences of what might happen in a relationship because you're like, chalo, theek hai, I'm 22 years old. I'll go through a 2-year relationship. It'll break off. I'll have 2 years to cry over it. If I don't cry over it, I'll go through another 2-year relationship. You have a lot of time.
Yeah.
When you mature, when you become above 30, you're like, yeah, the next person could suddenly get serious about कि भाई मेरे को तो शादी ही करनी है, and you don't have any other
Obviously.
thing, right? So you have to take things seriously also because then
I
they can
agree.
get on your nerves. They can also sue you. They can also cause emotional drama.
This is such a guy thing, but ठीक है यार, लड़कों के साथ ही अभी थोड़ा बहुत बुरा हो रहा है. I'm going to give that to them. ये SUU वाली चीज ना, बेचारे इतने लड़के ट्रॉमेटाइज हो गए, या तो अपने किस्से कहानियों कारण या अपने दोस्तों के सुन के कि यार पता नहीं बहुत ध्यान से शादी करनी है. व्हाट इफ शी टेक्स हाफ ऑफ माय मनी, आई डोंट वांट टू गिव हर हाफ ऑफ माय. भाई तो अपना आधा प्यार दे दे, क्या नहीं चाहिए तेरे पैसे.
Right.
चिल कर.
So ठीक है.
What are we talking about today?
No, that is pretty much evident by our title of the podcast, which is dating in your early 20s versus your 30s. So yeah, so we're going to talk about all the different challenges and the mindset and things like
What
how our
is
social
different?
circles affect us. Like you have very young, powerful, energetic friends who tell you ye bhi kar le, wo bhi kar
I am
le.
still young and energetic.
Anyway,
Okay.
so yeah, so to begin with, let's start with maturity and priorities. So in our early 20s, we might prioritizing exploratory phase where we want to explore and go on self discovery about what is commitment and what are we like in relationships. Versus later on, there's a different kind of things that we seek. So what do you think about how you were in your 20s versus how I
Oh
was in your
dear Lord.
late 20s?
So early 20s, I was very, I think, see, I have the saying where I keep saying that I will always have this much energy. Even as a 90-year-old budi, I want to have this amount of energy. Maybe, I don't know, obviously the physical energy in terms of शायद मैं यहाँ से उठ के नहीं दौड़ पाऊंगी, but this is the energy that I will freaking bring to the table, if you
Right.
talk to me. So that is something that I definitely want to carry. So I always had that energy, चाहे early 20s हो या late 20s हो. But early 20s में I was very naive, is what I would say. And I did not know the ways of the world. So I got played and all of that happened. Because at that time, I was the kind of person I used to blindly trust people. I still give people a lot of benefit of the doubt. But then I have my senses and not exactly my guards up, but I can sense energies and I can judge in the sense I can understand get a basic idea of the person. ऐसे एकदम ही तो वैसे ये तो मुझे नहीं बोलना चाहिए after like I don't know. Yeah, I don't know यार, क्योंकि relationships में you think पता है कि यार अब हम बड़े हो गए हैं, हमारे साथ we won't mess this up, but कहीं ना कहीं it is complicated. They are complicated human emotions. One person, you would love one person, the other person wouldn't love you, someone walks away, it's a mess.
Yeah, you're
So,
right.
yeah.
So in our early 20s, we're very open about, chalo pata kar lete hai, this might be exciting or this person seems interesting, this could lead to something amazing. So that, go behind it. But in your late 20s or in your early 30s, you're more about finding the right partner, right? And by the time you get into your first relationships early on in your early 20s, you don't have a pretty much any idea of what you want and who you are as a person, what you want. But I think most people by the end of their 20s get to a point where they have a list of attributes that they want to find in their partners, right? So
I hate the freaking list. Thank you for bringing this up.
mhm.
Again, you're right. Early 20s mean nobody in their early 20s I've ever heard, oh, I have a list. This is what I want from a partner. This is a very late 20s, 30s, whatever you would call it, thing to do, where people now have lists. They're like, मुझे ये checklist चाहिए. But people are not walking checklists, okay? So maybe तुम एक subconscious checklist रख सकते हो. And whenever I tell people I don't have a list, they say that you're lying because everyone has a list. सो इनफैक्ट मेरी आज ही किसी से बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग कॉन्वर्सेशन हो रही थी रिगार्डिंग सबकॉन्शियस लिस्ट वर्सेस कॉन्शियस लिस्ट. Subconscious list is फिर भी fine कि on a broad level I know what I want. You cannot actually have a freaking pen and paper list कि ये है मेरे 5 bullet point, मुझे ये चाहिए, and people have that, and some of the points in there are freaking out of this world कि यार क्या चाहते हो तुम लोग, ऐसे तुम्हारी चेकलिस्ट को पूरा करने के लिए बने क्या? कुछ दिल का कुछ कोई लेना देना नहीं बन.
Well, to be honest, I have been through a lot of heartbreaks, like we've spoken about in different podcast episodes also. But I have come to realize that yes, you need some of these parameters and checklists and attributes that you are looking for, because otherwise you'd be totally lost and you would never settle on someone. But how this all started was somebody asked me once, कि और एक तू तो इतना प्यार relationship के बारे में बोलता है, you say that you've matured and you've matured through heartbreaks and all of that. Do you actually have a list, or do you even know what you are looking for? You keep yapping about तेरे को पता है तेरे को क्या चाहिए. I said, yeah, I know pretty much in my head, but I couldn't count, let's say, even 5 things that I wanted at that point in time in that conversation all of a sudden. So then I felt like a hypocrite कि मैं बोल तो रहा हूँ, but even I don't have a guideline, right? So what I did was I actually went ahead and wrote points, and how I broke it down was things that I want and don't want. Sometimes people ask me, how do you figure out what you want? I said, to figure out what you want is first eliminate what you don't want. So that's how the list started, with 10 things that I wanted in my partner and 5 things I didn't want. And those 5 things are also like the opposite of the 10 things that I wanted in a partner. Anyway, when I sat with that list, I realized, yeah, this is very specific. I can't get specific points in someone. Then I realized, what I could do is I could make a compatibility checklist, right? So that this entire thing of what I wanted in a person, all of these attributes came down in terms of a checklist, which was like, these are the most 7 important things that I want to look in my partner, apart from the negotiable ones, which could be 10,000 things. These are 7 things, and you, Sania, could have 10 things on that list, on that checklist. Somebody could have 2. I have 7. So for me,
have I seen this checklist or not seen this checklist?
You have seen this, obviously. We spoke about it on Galla Gadium also, but
oh, that is a segment that we are going to start.
Yes.
Way to give spoilers now, but anyway.
Yeah. So the checklist is very simple. So for example, the first point is intellectual match. For me, it's very important. I've always been vocal about how important it is. Like after travel, during travel, after sex, during lunches, what do? You talk about stuff. And if you can't talk, you don't have intimacy. So the basic thing is that for me, I want somebody who has a good emotional and intellectual connection with me. So that checklist is more like a scale of 1 to 10. If I'm talking to, let's say, 5 people before I actually settle down, I would want to see if person A has 7 on 10 on that thing versus 9 on that thing versus okay and okay, try to understand, don't cheat about it. I know you made a face and you made a sound which everybody heard, but the thing is, on the seventh point is belief systems, okay, which I don't want to touch, because you're an adult who's been in 30 years on this planet and you have influences. I don't want to touch your belief systems. I don't want any compatibility per se ki bhai dekhna hai ki you're a 5 on 10 or a 7 on 10 or a 10 on 10 on belief system, but I want to understand that your belief system and my belief systems align together so that we don't have any conflicts around your belief system. I suddenly कल को उठ के आपने बोला कि यार मेरे को तो आश्रम जाना है, that should not come as a surprise, right?
Right.
So anyway, so that is just an example. So there are different things, and what happens is that this checklist actually helps me keep in my mind, जैसे food preferences is an important thing. So हमेशा background में एक guideline चल रहा है कि when I'm talking to a person, I keep that in mind कि अच्छा, this person actually is making sense on this parameter of the list, which is fine. For me, these 7 things, for example, food is one of them. What else is there on that list? Oopsie, I'm forgetting what's on that list. But anyway, I'm too tired for this right now. But the point is कि whatever's on that list is very arbitrary. I want to have a guiding line, but this is not exactly मेरे को ये चाहिए. Because if you have that, you know what you want. Otherwise, people are now seeking one person after the other on a dating site or on a matrimony site. You're not able to settle down because you don't exactly know.
Yeah, I agree to this part. You don't exactly know what you want or don't want, so that is an issue with people these days. But again, that is what I'm saying. द इशू में बी इज नॉट कि उन्हें ठीक है नहीं पता मुझे क्या चाहिए, पर इसका ये मतलब नहीं है ना कि तुम्हारी चेकलिस्ट पूरी हो जाएगी तो इंसान अगर अच्छा नहीं निकला तो तुम चेकलिस्ट का क्या अचार थोड़ी डालोगे. एंड आई रिसेंटली स्पोक टू समवन लाइक दिस who apparently had like a whole very comprehensive checklist and सारी checklist की चीजें match होती थी, but the partner was not really a kind human being, so the other person was obviously very hurt by it and that person called it off. So that's what I'm saying. And then I confronted him. I'm like, what did you learn? Did you at least learn something? Your checklist did not work for you. Did it? Because you can have a checklist saying कि oh मुझे ये डिग्री चाहिए. I'm like, और मैंने आज ही ये लाइन किसी को बोली अगेन, एंड आई विल से दिस हियर टू. तुम डिग्री या जो भी है या होता या पैसे सब मैटर करता है भाई, बहुत मैटर करता है. मैं तो 110% बोलती हूँ. लेकिन जब तुम ऐसे फेस टू फेस कॉन्वर्सेशंस कर रहे हो ना, डिग्री को लेके तुम नई बातें कर रहे हो क्योंकि तुम ये बातें कर रहे हो, राइट? पैसे से, सो जो लाइन मैंने बोली थी विच जो मुझे हाँ बोली है, पैसे से घर चलता है, रिश्ते इंसानों से चलते हैं, विच इज उनकी अच्छाई या नहीं अच्छाई, उनकी अंडरस्टैंडिंग, उनकी काइंडनेस, तुम्हारी कंपैटिबिलिटी, उस पे रिश्ते चलते हैं. सो yeah, not everything can be a checklist. जो आज की प्रॉब्लम है कमिंग टू दैट इज कि लोग कमिट नहीं करना चाहते. पीपल थिंक दैट देयर इज समथिंग बेटर आउट देयर, व्हिच इज पीपल, होता है कई बार पीपल स्पेशली ऑन द डेटिंग एप्स, people go from one date to another date to another date. और ये this is a thing which I have recently heard people say कि oh I get, and ठीक है, I obviously heard the other spectrum, so this is not a, I don't know लड़कियां भी ऐसा बोलती होंगी या नहीं, मुझे तो आज तक नहीं बोला किसी लड़की ने, बट कई बंदों ने मुझे बोला है कि this is sort of like a flex now. Oh I get a date every weekend, or oh I met 3 women in the past 2 weeks. I'm like, and this is always my question, were any of those repeat dates? They're like, no, all of them. And I'm like, okay, so all of them were first dates. They're like, yeah. So I'm like, what are you achieving out of this? Isn't your goal? And when you ask them तुम्हें क्या चाहिए, तो वो मुंह पे बोलेंगे हाँ, I'm looking for something permanent, I want to do a date, and then if things go well, I want to get married. This is not how you do it. So
yeah, well, so I just opened the whole compatibility checklist on my phone because मैंने ये phone पे बना रखा है. So there are 7 points which I mentioned, and why I'm bringing this up, I'll tell you about. You said कि पैसों से घर नहीं चलता है, रिश्तों से चलता है.
नहीं, मैं कह रही हूँ पैसों से घर चलता है,
पैसों से घर चलता है, रिश्ते क्या कहते हैं, इमोशंस एंड बातों एंड
exactly.
So for me, the number one point is mental match, intellectual match. The second thing is emotional maturity. Third thing is food and taste. कि भाई मेरे को सोचना ना पड़े कि तू अलग खाएगी जब हम बहुत डिस्कस है कि हम क्या खा रहे हैं. Third is financial prudence, which a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people think, अरे यार मेरा पार्टनर इतना कमाना चाहिए, या if I'm a woman I am earning 1.5 lakh rupees, the partner should earn at least 5 lakh rupees or 6 lakh rupees, right? It is not about कि तुम्हारे में कितना gap है. What if the partner earns more than you, right? But he does not spend on any of the things that you want them to spend, you want to spend together, or on the things that actually make sense. अगर वो दारू नशे में उड़ा दे रहा है या क्या कहते हैं कुछ और चीज करके उड़ा रहा है जहाँ पे आपकी सहमति नहीं है, what is the whole point of somebody earning that extra 5 lakh rupees, 10 lakh rupees, or whatever that extra amount of money is, right? Number 5 on the list is sexual preferences. A lot of people these days say that, oh, हमें तो test करना है, we want to check compatibility. I think even before you actually get into the act of physically testing anything, you can actually talk about it and understand कि भाई what are the needs of the person. Are they open-minded about certain things? Are they close-minded about certain other things? Can you do certain things? Can you not do certain things? बातें करके आप पता लगा सकते हो even before you get to the whole act of it. Then number 6 पे आता है travel orientation कि यार मैं अगर पहाड़ों में जाता तो वो कहती है मेरे को बीच पे रहना है, अगर वो कहती है कि मैं पहाड़ में बिल्कुल नहीं जाऊंगी, then that does not make sense. So these are certain things, and again belief systems. So these are just a guiding light, in fact, in terms of कि मुझे क्या चाहिए, but these are not gospel या ये पत्थर की लकीर नहीं कि मेरे को यही चीजें चाहिए उसमें. Having said that, the reason why people are not settling down, I spoke to a psychologist also, they said that it's called choice overload. When you have too many options, you're like, yeah, koi baat nahi, let me swipe for another 3 days, another 5 days, another 3 months, another 5 years. You will never freaking stop. And that is why I think it is a mix of things. Sometimes people say that checklist likhna bhi achhi baat nahi hai because a human being is not a walking, talking checklist, right? But I think it's a mix of both. You have to know where a guiding principle, what your boundaries are in terms of who you're wanting to settle down with, and then make that list, and then be open-minded about what the things that you can let go and not let go, and then settle down with someone.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, okay, now tell me, career is a very important part in terms of how relationships are shaped, and especially in your early life when you are just starting out, So like in our early 20s, what happens is that we are very early in our careers and we are looking for stability and we're not very stable. So our mindset is very different. So, for example, I'll give you an example. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and my partner at the time, and I'd been with her for 5 years then. And she said, Auric, you know what? You don't get into entrepreneurship, keep this stable job, and we'll get married because we'll have to get married. And that's the only freaking time I've ever agreed to saying yes कि हाँ चलो ठीक है मैं अपने aspirations छोड़ दूंगा हमारे साथ रहने के लिए. But that relationship was anyways not a very good one. It was going through very bad patches, and that person was not somebody I am with today because of certain reasons. And I'm absolutely sure today कि I would never ever say to that person कि मैं तेरे लिए कुछ छोड़ दूंगा. I think that is the balance that you have to find, that we are willing to do something together. I have my independent choices and ambitions. You have your independent choices and ambitions. As mature people, how can we build bridges? I think if anybody agrees to doing anything which the other person wants, is not a good thing. So in our early 20s, we're like, हाँ ठीक है मैं प्यार के लिए ये कर लूंगा मैं दूसरे सिटी में नहीं जाऊंगा या हम दोनों shift कर जाएंगे. That is not the right thing to do. Versus when I am today where I am in my life, I am pretty sure of what I'm doing and that makes sense and that is making impact in people's life. I'm like, whoever comes into my life, they will see this and they will understand the value of what I'm creating and they will appreciate it and then they will support me. If they can't support me, they're not the right partner for me, anyways.
Yeah, exactly. You cannot change for people and you should not be changing for people. That is the thing.
So you tell me, how has your career been affected by relationships?
My career has been affected by me. Okay, there is no partner strong enough to be like. But I will tell you something. एक पॉजिटिव इफेक्ट मैंने होते हुए कई बार देखा है. सो इन वन ऑफ माय रिलेशनशिप्स वन पार्टनर सॉर्ट ऑफ लाइक pushed me towards what I wanted to achieve. So जो भी है वो चीज मैंने अचीव कर पाई या नहीं कर पाई इज अ डिफरेंट इशू. बट आई रियलाइज दैट पॉजिटिव मोटिवेशन कमिंग फ्रॉम माई पार्टनर एट द टाइम मेंट अ लॉट टू मी. बिकॉज इट्स देन ऐसा होता है ना कई बार कि तुम अपने लिए शायद चीजें करो या ना करो, बट व्हेन यू आर थिंकिंग ऑफ द you think that someone believes in you and is supporting you so much, then it's not just about you, then it's about maybe the both of you together. And maybe also because then you're like यार if I do this मेरी life तो अच्छी होगी, हम दोनों की साथ में भी life बहुत अच्छी होगी, and if I can contribute for that then why would I not want to do that. So that's just an extra bit of motivation. हालांकि I keep saying career is something which is extremely personal and it should be extremely personal. You do whatever you want to do, I'll do whatever I want to do, but I feel like there should be some sort of support from the partner, from both of the partner side towards whatever the other person is doing, and there has to be a lot of respect, because I've seen many people disrespect what their partner does for a living. That is a huge turn off and it's a very big red flag is what I think. Because यार your career and your personal life, career तुम खुद ही सोचो, मतलब as like corporate people we हम नाम के 40 घंटे, लोग लिटरली 12-12 घंटे क्लॉक इन करते हैं. सो इट्स लाइक 60 hours, 50, लेट्स टेक एन एवरेज 50 hours a week. दैट्स व्हाट वी आर डूइंग. यू कांट टेल पीपल कि यार ये तो क्या ही काम है. नो, ठीक है, मे बी इफ यू आर बेटर देन देम और यू थिंक यू हैव डन बेटर और मे बी यू अर्न एन एक्स्ट्रा कपल ऑफ whatever amount of money, which is fine, ठीक है वो बात. लेकिन you cannot be demeaning other people's choices, other people's professions, because that is something very personal to them as well. So you need to respect that and support them.
I've also come to realize that you cannot say that मैं life में ये कर रहा हूँ या कर रही हूँ तो मेरे partner को भी इतना ही achieve करना है. I think everybody's ambition levels are different, right?
I know.
You can't impose your ambitions on somebody else, and you have to understand, respect कि उन्हें कहाँ जाना है life में. Their trajectory and your trajectory could be different. So I have two examples to give here. Like one with somebody in the family, like older, way older, मतलब let's say my father's age. The husband was early in their marriage. They had love marriage. Early in their marriage, he was into the hotel business. All right, restaurant hotel business. He was doing pretty well, catering and hotel business. The hotel and catering business takes a lot of time because the closing times are very late. You have to
I know. I've had someone in the family. In
2-3 baje वापस आ रहे हो, all of that happens. So because it was a love marriage, people, the wife started saying that you are not spending enough time with me. We're newlyweds. You should spend more time. So that person actually closed that business. Okay.
Oh.
And उसके बाद their entire journey was downhill. They never made it big in their lives. In fact, अगर वो चल रहा होता business, they could have been, and the partner who started that business with today is a multi-crorepati, right?
No.
So that is what I've seen. Another thing which happened to me was in my last relationship, I was very, very happy with that person. I in fact thought of she's the right person to probably get married to, and we could get married. But the only thing was that her trajectory of where she wanted to go and do things was different. So she said मुझे अभी पढ़ने जाना है, तो I said ठीक है पढ़ ले, रोका कर लेते हैं, then you go study and come back. नहीं, शादी करके जाना है. I said that is very immature, right? You will go to a different country, you will be exposing yourself to different people. You could have a हृदय परिवर्तन, right? You might feel कि यार नहीं वापस आना मेरे को, या मेरे को वहाँ पे कोई मिल गया. Why? मतलब be practical about it. And because we did not align on that part, we actually called it off. And today we are friends, but we didn't take it forward. So that's the whole point, right? Where in my early 20s, I was ready to give up on my dreams. Here, I was ready to give up on a relationship because it didn't make practical sense for the both of us.
Yeah.
Because why ruin your individual lives
Never.
for
Never.
you to be
It's
together?
never
You should
worth it.
individually in a relationship be happy together, but you should
Yes.
not lose your individuality.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, you need to be strong individually, and you should have a sense of what you want to do and where you want to go, because then only will you not be dependent on the other person, and you will actually be able to see support. अच्छी बात होती है, but you cannot depend on someone. So there is a difference. So हाँ.
Right. Okay, so what about social circles? I mean, our social circles and our activities, obviously, the kind of people that we have in our lives, affect us. Like, for example, if we have a bunch of people who are, asking us to party all the time, or if everybody around us believes in frivolous relationships, right? Versus somebody in your circle always talks about being in a serious relationship. So you are shaped by your social circle. So how does that affect?
I think भाई ये contrast बहुत ही अच्छे से we can see in the early 20s versus the late 20s thing. कि in the early 20s you usually are like कि you will get affected by all of that, because as a 22-year-old I've seen people जो जाके बोलते हैं यार ये तो मेरी serious relationship है, and then some people mock and they're like अरे यार ये तो मजे करने की उम्र है and तुम क्या ही serious relationship कर रहे हो and वैसा. And because the entire social circle is doing one sort of thing, so you think कि हाँ यार ये तो शायद cool enough नहीं है मेरे लिए किसी एक को कमेंट करना, अगर हर कोई शायद casual relationships कर मुझे भी कर लेने चाहिए, तो वो एक social वो आता है. But I think as you grow up, especially in your like late 20s, 30s, you don't get because you have had your own past and your own life. Now you are shaped by and sort of limited by also, in if you choose to not overcome it, by what has happened to you per se in past and where you want to go in the future. So वो दोनों के basis पे तुम decide करते हो ये चीजें और उस हिसाब से तुम act करते हो, rather than social pressure फिर उतना नहीं पड़ता है. But late 20s में ऐसा होता है कि I think the marriage pressure is very real. So basically हाँ मतलब वो भी है कि I've seen some people get married just for the sake of it, to randomly anybody 2 महीने बात करके मैंने शादी कर ली because सब शादी कर रहे हैं. So the social thing also matters. So sometimes you give into pressure.
Yeah, so I think it's a 90s kid versus a 2000 kids wala conversation. Yeah, I don't know if it just happens in your early 20s and versus in your 30s. Is that when you're in your early 20s, a lot of your friends actually set you up with a lot of people and they push you into getting into relationships.
मेरे तो कभी इतने अच्छे दोस्त नहीं थे, but I've heard that. I've heard that.
Right? And later when you become mature and in your late 20s or in your early 30s, a lot of friends actually don't help because they're like, I don't want to be responsible for what happens to them, right? That's a real thing that happens. So I think social circle actually affects you quite strongly, but I think there's a different dimension to it as well, where I actually believe that you have to expose your partner to your friends and family, because sometimes objectively you're not able to see the flaws in them which other people actually see. I am not saying that you should listen to what other people have to say about your partner, because obviously you see something in them more closer to because you are in a relationship with them. But I think having an objective eye from somebody else, a third party who is not involved in that relationship, also helps you avoid certain red flags which you are not able to see because you're enamored by them.
Yeah, I agree. So meeting the friends, meeting the families anyway important. It tells the other person also कि यार ठीक है, I'm serious about you and I'm not hiding you from the people that I love, which is your friends and family usually. And I've heard people say this कि हाँ यार वो तो सच बात है, you are enamored by the everything, but the other person can look at it objectively. बट पता है क्या, यू हैव टू लर्न इट फॉर योर सेल्फ. एंड मुझे तो वो भी थोड़ी सी अजीब ही लगती है कि मान लो तुम्हारे दोस्तों ने बोल दिया, तुम्हारे घर वालों ने बोल दिया कि यार हमें तो लग रहा है बहुत ही खराब इंसान है, एंड इफ यू ब्लाइंडली फॉलो इट देन दैट इज ऑल्सो एन इशू. यू शुड ऑल्सो टेक इट सॉर्ट ऑफ लाइक एज एन आउटसाइड एडवाइस एंड यूज योर नॉलेज अबाउट द पर्सन जो तुमने अब तक सोचा समझा है, एंड देन जक्सपोज देम एंड सी कि यार अच्छा दोनों चीजों में कोई है क्या, ये जो इन्होंने बात बोली है कि इफ आई look at it from a third person's POV, is their thing making sense? Is my thing making sense? So, but it is good to get an idea, but I don't think you should blindly rely on it.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, the next bit of thing is very interesting to me also because I've changed a lot in my styles of communication and conflict resolution. I think
Mm-hmm.
that is a major part of how you in your 20s deal with things very differently versus how you deal in your late 20s or 30s. Is that your communication style changes, you become a little more receptive. Early on, you don't care what are the repercussions of what you say and what you say actually hurts people or not. But by the time you become more responsible in a relationship, the more you've been hurt and more people have hurt you, or you've hurt people, you actually now start thinking about what you say to them and how that affects your whole thing. Like today, I'm like the whole point of why I'm sad today is because I know what could happen versus what actually might happen if things go both ways. Like good things happen, tab bhi barbadi hogi. नहीं भी होता है तो भी बर्बादी होगी. I'm like, yeah, this is a very peculiar situation. So communication and conflict style. So what do you have to say on the whole communication? How that's actually?
Yeah, but again, early 20s, most of us are like boners. We're like, पता ही नहीं है क्या हो रहा है. हाँ, ठीक है, देखा जाएगा. And people are not really communicative. And again, it's the whole thing. Maybe it's not considered cool enough to talk about your feelings or emotions. So you would be labeled as, अरे यार, ये क्यों ये सारी बातें कर रहा है? If you are not that mature, you will be like, this is हम नहीं सुनना चाहते ये बातें. But versus definitely the late 20s, you become a little bit better at it also because of your own experiences, and then you grow up. That is part of growing up where you're like, no, I need to communicate. But unfortunately, this is not an age thing. This is something which has got to do with who you are as an individual. If you still don't believe in communicating your feelings, then you would never do it. So you have to solve that within you. And I've seen this to be like a man versus woman thing in some cases, where women in general like to talk it out. And ये मैं नहीं बोल रही हूँ, मैंने कई लोगों से बात करके भी I've gotten this conclusion कि हाँ, women like to talk it out and solve problems बात करके. But usually men, there are some men out there who will sit with you and talk to you and all of that, but usually because of the whole societal bullshit and the whole pressure as well कि नहीं यार लड़का है, लड़कों को इमोशंस नहीं दिखानी चाहिए, vulnerability नहीं दिखानी चाहिए and all of that. So they think कि you know what, I'm not supposed to communicate, but that is what I keep saying और कई बार भी बोला और यहाँ भी बोलूंगी कि communicate. So maybe it's not just an age thing, but also a gender thing, and whatever it is, it's not good. You basically are supposed to communicate, both of you. So,
Yeah, well, so a lot of people now don't believe when I tell them that I used to be an introvert, and they say, "You do not seem like an introvert. You speak so much and you speak so well." I'm like, "Nee, yaar, I've had to learn and make active choices into wanting to become this person." But when I was an introvert, I used to keep everything hidden inside and not used to share anything at all, right? That also I've realized has actually caused a lot of trouble than it should have, right? Because if you are not telling your partner what you need and how to make you feel more comfortable and talk about your needs, it is anyways going to die down because you're going to get tired of it someday, right? Or they're going to hurt you so bad because they don't know what trajectory the relationship is going. They're going to hurt you so bad that it is going to end any which ways. So that has what has led me to adopt a very honest and open style of communication now, where I pretty much speak my mind from day one without the worry about ये कैसे जज कर रहे हैं, ये मेरे साथ will they stick around or not, because I've realized जिसको आपके साथ stick करना है वो वैसे भी आपकी सारी सच्चाई
exactly.
जान के भी stick करेगा, जिसको नहीं रुकना है वो नहीं रुकेगा. So I think honesty and upfront communication actually saves you a lot of time, saves you a lot of heartbreak as well. कि जिसको नहीं साथ रहना है नहीं रहेगा, जिसको दिख जाएगा कि मैं
I agree.
वो रह जाएगा.
मैं तो हमेशा से ऐसी हूँ.
But the major part, even around the communication styles, has been around the conflict resolution part, where I used to get supremely angry and I used to be like, if the person is going, let them go, जाने दो, क्या फर्क पड़ता है, I will find somebody else and I know my value and all of that thing. Today, I also still believe I have great value to give to my partner, but I believe that, you are investing your time and energy and it is your choice why you decide to date somebody, right? You have to stick to those choices and you have to actually, do things from your part also, even if sometimes it's your partner's fault. You have to understand that you can also sometimes let go if it is not something that is actually destroying your very being. And why can't you let go and just
I know,
solve
हर
things?
चीज exactly choose your fight side. Keep
Yeah.
saying that. If it is worth it, do it. If it is not worth it, तो रहने दो यार. Some things can.
So yeah,
can let
in
go
our
of.
early 20s, I've seen a lot of people being very brushy about हाँ क्या फर्क पड़ता है, मारपीट कर देते हैं. And a lot of people also, on the flip side, when you have a lot of breakups and relationship, we're taking a break or you break up multiple times in a long term relationship, that does not happen in your late 30s, because now you know कि यार ultimately the more breaks you take from someone, things anyways become so cracked that they will never come back together. So in your late 20s or early 30s, you're more about, let us not take those breaks. Let's actually solve them before, things get out of hand. Because अगर आपने एक बार breakup कर लिया तो आप pretty much
हाँ,
करते
it's
ही
over.
जाओगे.
हाँ, क्या ही है, हाँ, right.
So the next point is about baggage and past experiences. I think early on in our lives, we actually accumulate a lot of these experiences and we don't think how they're affecting us. But by the time we reach our late 20s
Yeah,
and
I
early
agree.
30s, a lot of that actually weighs us down, and that actually changes how we perceive relationships. Sometimes we actually push good people away, sometimes we actually pull toxic people to us. So
That is
all of
so
that
true.
happens. So
Yeah.
what is your, you speak to
No,
a lot of people, you have a lot of insight where you tell, I asked men about their relationships and वो पूरा राम कथा सुना देते.
yes, this is now a flex that I should be having. But see, honestly, मैं 4 सवाल पूछती हूँ, मुझे 2 घंटे के बारे में लोग बता के देते हैं, and I feel immensely happy doing that because I'm like, wow, these people feel comfortable enough, and I probably know the right things to ask, and I have that, when you sit across me, and if I actually care, वो चीज आ जाती है सामने वाले को समझ के, सही में जानना चाहती है, so I actually care about what they have to speak. सो मैंने वही ये इनफैक्ट दिस होल इमोशनल बैगेज वाली थिंग, एवरीबडी ऑलमोस्ट सेज दिस कि यार, एंड दिस तो कह रहा है एग्री, लाइक इन योर अर्ली 20s यू पहली पहली तुमने बार चीजें कर रहे हो, तुम्हें कुछ पता नहीं है, यू डोंट बेसिकली हैव पास्ट रिलेशनशिप ट्रॉमा की ये हुआ ये नहीं हुआ, यू डोंट हैव अ रेफरेंस पॉइंट, इवन एवरीथिंग इज न्यू फॉर यू, एवरीथिंग इज यूनिक. So you do not, almost don't have any baggage, except obviously if you have childhood trauma, that is something different and something deep. But in general, relationship related trauma तुम्हारा नहीं होता है. So versus when you go up until your late 20s, the relationships that you have been in sort of form your opinion, and then you also become very wary, because this is a common thing जो मैंने सबसे बहुत लोगों से बोलते हुए सुनी है कि you know what, अगर ये अर्ली 20s हो तो मैं तो शायद ये वाले पर्टिकुलर रिलेशनशिप में चली जाती, बिकॉज कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस की कौन सोचता है. बट वर्सेस लेट 20s, पीपल एक्चुअली थिंक कि यार, इफ आई गो दिस route, I will get my heart broken because this has happened in the past, reference point, या जैसा भी है, मैंने जितना अब तक सीखा है up until now, मुझे अब समझ आया कि नहीं, if I जो you were saying this, right, कि अब हम आगे का सोच के एनालाइज कर सकते हैं दिमाग में, तो वो सब करते हैं यार, if I go down this path, so this will lead to heartbreak and I don't want to deal with another heartbreak. So that is a common theme which I have seen among late 20s वाले लोग कि I don't want another heartbreak, and almost everybody has emotional baggage. I was again speaking to someone and this person said a very good thing, is like emotional baggage सबके पास होता है, लेकिन इमोशनल बैगेज तुम्हें अपना डील, एंड 2-3 लोगों ने मुझे ये चीज बोली, एंड दिस कमिंग फ्रॉम मेन, which is also sort of like a double-edged sword sort of thing to say this, कि तुम्हें अपना इमोशनल बैगेज खुद से डील करना चाहिए. इसमें प्रोज भी है कॉन्स भी है. सी, तुम्हें खुद से डील करना चाहिए, मीनिंग यू शुड नॉट कैरी द पास्ट रिलेशनशिप ट्रॉमा एंड ब्रिंग इट टू द न्यू रिलेशनशिप. मान लो तुम्हें पहले किसी ने चीट किया, कुछ किया, तुम अभी भी इस पे डाल रहे हो वो चीज कि नहीं उसने किया तो तुम अब शकी इंसान बन चुके हो कि नहीं यार, लेट इट गो, दैट पर्सन वाज लाइक दैट. जरूरी नहीं है कि ये इंसान भी ऐसा ही करेगा. यू कीप एन ओपन माइंड व्हेन यू आर गेटिंग इनटू द न्यू रिलेशनशिप, बट ब्रिंग योर लर्निंग्स इनटू इट, कि हाँ, अगर तुम्हें ऐसे टेल ऑल साइंस दिखे थे कि ये बंदा चीट कर रहा है, तो और तुम्हें दोबारा वो साइंस सच में दिख रहे हैं, and not exactly you being paranoid about it, तो then obviously why not, तब तुम वो चीज को, लर्निंग को यूज करो, but don't carry that baggage. But at the same time I feel ठीक है, बैगेज तुम्हें अपना खुद से हैंडल करना है, बट एट द सेम टाइम when it comes to emotional support, I think you should definitely be there for your partners. You can't be like, तेरी लाइफ में ये चल रहा है, मुझे फर्क नहीं पड़ता, because you are an adult, you are supposed to deal with it on your own.
Yeah, well, on the emotional baggage bit that everybody has it, yes, obviously, as you get your heart broken, you will have a lot of things that you want to, take forward, and that becomes a part of you. But I think if you work on your self journey, and if you work on yourself and healing, and realizing what actually made you, and because of those things actually you were never happy, you actually can go ahead and change certain things about yourself, change your behavior, change your attitude towards things, make better choices in people, in your decision making also, and that actually helps you deal with those baggages. And sometimes, in most cases, that baggage can also be eliminated completely if you're working on this uh, process of self healing and self discovery, and being a better person. But I think to deconstruct the whole checklist wala part came from things I want and don't want. ये जो emotional maturity वाली part है, right? That emotional maturity comes from actually dealing with a lot of heartbreaks and being in a lot of
Yeah.
relationships. तो जो attributes वाला point था कि things that I want में this point coincided was I want someone who has experienced love and relationship and heartbreaks and everything, right? I don't want to be with a person who's not felt the agony of not
Same.
being with a person
Yeah.
or somebody abandoning them, because I can't be the first person they deal with, because if something goes wrong, they're not going to be emotionally
I know,
smart
I
enough
know.
to deal with it. So
Yeah.
I might as well go with somebody who's been heartbroken, who has dealt with their emotional baggage, versus somebody who has baggages or who does not have anything at all. I think a blank canvas is also a very wrong thing. So
No, I तो would want the person. In fact, इस चीज पे भी बात हुई है, and almost everybody who's had a past, this is what they say, that I would prefer the other person to have a past, and मेरा भी यही logic या reason है कि यार I cannot be the person to teach you these things, first of all, and second of all I would want for you to understand and have gone through heartbreaks, because that helps you realize probably the importance of relationships, the importance of people more, and how to deal with it as well. So I would prefer if the other person has already experienced that.
yeah, true. Also, very weirdly, I met someone very recently, or I matched with someone, did meet them in person. They said that they've never been in any relationship and they were 33 years old. And like,
Yeah.
this is a big red flag. I mean, for whatever reason, see, I also understand the perspective that, a lot of people go through a lot of trauma and for whatever reasons, they can't actually get in relationship. But it is very dangerous when
That means I'm
and
not solved,
I,
na?
I
That
could
is an
see that
issue.
even in the chatting phase, right? While we're only texting on the dating app, I could see that that person was getting jittery about a lot of things which is not a lot of normal people would have gone through if they had been through relationships, and they would have known कि
Yeah.
ऐसा होता है, right? So that was a very tricky thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the next point that I want to discuss is expectation versus deal breakers, right? Sometimes we go through with a lot of deal breakers. We're like, ठीक है यार, क्या फर्क पड़ता है, देख लेंगे बाद में. That is the kind of attitude that you have in your 20s कि यार पूरी दुनिया से लड़के मैं तेरे साथ रह लूंगा, मैं हम अपना
Yeah.
धर्म ईमान बेच के सब कुछ काम कर लेंगे, हम प्यार से अपना पेट भर लेंगे, all of those things. But I think as you grow up, you realize that certain things cannot be changed, and your expectations also have to be changed about what you want in your life and what your partner is going to play a role in your life versus the deal breakers that they bring, right? Sometimes there are things which are absolutely negotiable, which might be still irritating to you कि हाँ ठीक है क्यों करता है मेरा पार्टनर, बट ठीक है, you can brush that aside if the partner is a really good person. But there are certain things that you don't brush off, like a avoidant partner who does not want any kind of conflict at all is
Yeah.
also a very wrong thing, right? So that's just an example. So what do you think about how we deal with deal breakers and when we're in our early 20s versus in our late?
I think early 20s में you let a lot of shit go. You're like, हाँ ठीक है, तुम्हें तो first of all deal breakers अपने पता भी नहीं होते हैं. But late 20s में we have become so smart. Now we discuss our deal breakers beforehand.
Yep.
For example, for me, a very simple deal breaker is the whole non-veg versus veg thing, which all of my friends are also aware about. And some people don't realize the importance of it, but I'm a foodie. So I love going out, exploring new places. I would not be able to do, well, I would obviously be able to go with them, but then if our food choices are different, so that, for me, it creates a divide. So this is something जो पहले बात भी नहीं, यहाँ ऐसे ही बात हो जाती होगी, was not a deal breaker, but in your late 20s you now know what you want. ये तो बहुत ही छोटा example है in terms of your like attributes also that you want in a person. You are like, okay, cheating is a deal breaker, something else, dishonesty in general is a deal breaker, जो भी तुम्हारे अपने अपने deal breaker. So everybody knows what they don't want for sure. शायद कई लोगों को ये नहीं पता कि उन्हें चाहिए क्या, पर क्या नहीं चाहिए तो लोगों को बहुत अच्छी तरीके से पता है कि नहीं, this is a huge no, which is a very good thing, because instead of actually going into the relationship and then going through the entire heartbreak क्योंकि तुम्हें तब बाद में पता चल रही है चीजें, अब तुम पहले ही पता कर लेते हो, तो that is a very good thing in your late 20s. You ask beforehand all of these things.
Right. So, एक बार बताओ, how does family and family pressures and timelines affect you in your early 20s versus mid 20s versus late 20s?
Oh my god, so freaking much. There is a stark difference, because in your early 20s, like, मम्मी पापा से कौन मिलाता है, क्या ही कुंडली मैचिंग क्या होती है, no one gives a flying, मतलब किसी को फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. That is the point. You are more freer. एंड वही कि यार मैं दुनिया से लड़ जाऊंगा, क्या फर्क पड़ता है, मनवा लेंगे बाद में, एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट, अगेन द होल डील ब्रेकर थिंग. सो अब लोगों के, मान लो अगर कईयों के घर पे कुंडली इज लाइक अ मस्ट की मैच होनी ही चाहिए, तो वो लोग बकायदा फिर वैसा होता है कि पहले वो मैच करते हैं, फिर लड़का लड़की बोलते हैं कि लड़का लड़की भी खुद से बोलते हैं कि पूछ लिया जाता है कि यार तुम्हारे घर पे है क्या ऐसा कुछ. इधर पार्टी सेज कि हाँ हमारे में थोड़ा मानते हैं, तो पहले वो मैचिंग होती है, उसके निवान निकाले जाते हैं, देन लोग आगे बात भी करना स्टार्ट करते हैं. बिकॉज अगेन in your late 20s you now have the maturity to be like यार मुझे ये नहीं करना है कि मैं 2 साल 4 साल किसी के साथ हूँ और मैं एंड में जाके कुंडली मिला रहा हूँ या धर्म नहीं मैच हो रहा है, जो भी तुम्हारे अपने अपने लोगों के वो होते हैं ना फॉर्म्स की, या फैमिली नहीं मान रही है, फैमिली का एक कुछ आइडिया है कि मुझे ऐसा बहू या ऐसा दामाद चाहिए, वैसा कुछ भी अगर उनका है, तो इफ इट इज नॉट मैचिंग तो लोग अब पहले ही प्रोसीड नहीं करना चाहते. सो विच इज व्हाई सम ऑफ द पीपल दैट आई हैव टॉक्ड टू, व्हिच इज अ गुड थिंग आई थिंक, दे हैव टोल्ड मी कि इफ आई एवर गो अहेड विद समवन, तो मैं बिल्कुल 1 महीने के अंदर अपने पेरेंट्स से बात करा देता हूँ. एटलीस्ट इफ मिलवाना इज नॉट पॉसिबल, इफ दे आर इन अ डिफरेंट सिटी, आई वुड एटलीस्ट गेट देम ऑन अ फोन कॉल कि देखो मुझे ये पसंद है एंड ये है, आप भी बात कर लो एक बार. So at this point everyone wants to get everybody on board, and which is a very good thing कि बाद में जाके यार चाहे जो भी कर लो, फैमिली को कितने ही लोग मना कर पाते हैं, so वो बाद में हार्ट ब्रेक से बेटर है तुमने अभी बचा लिया.
But I think also on the timeline bit, I want to add that, in our early 20s, we do not care about marriage at all. We're like, dekh liya jayega, we'll see, and all of that. The more you get closer to, a age where everybody around you has now settled down or is almost done settling down, you're the only one left out. That actually builds a lot of pressure on a lot of people. Luckily, my parents are very supportive of all of that, and I'm not very focused about what happens in society. I want my own things. But I see a lot of my peers have given into that thing of, सबकी शादी हो रही है, हमें भी करना है, because there's a
I know.
set social construct that ये होता है, आप पढ़ाई करते हो, आप बड़े हो जाते हो, आप शादी करते हो, आप बच्चे करते हो, and all those things घर बनाते हो. So on the timelines, but what I've also realized is that I was somebody who would have never agreed to, getting into an arranged marriage kind of a situation, right? I was like, मैं तो भाई love marriage ही करूँगा, which is still the only thing that I want to do. But over a period of time of a lot of heartbreaks and not finding people and the urge to actually settle down, because that आप चाहे सेटल डाउन करो ना करो, बट वो कहीं ना कहीं आप में वो एक फीलिंग आ जाती है that you at some point in time want somebody in your life, right? That is always a thing. ठीक है, आपको नहीं मिलेगा, you also make yourself hard enough and in your head, and you become strong कि नहीं, अगर नहीं जीना किसी गलत इंसान के साथ तो हम अकेले भी रह लेंगे. But generally the whole companionship becomes a more real thing the more older you get. When I was in one of those stints where I was single for almost 3 years, I was like, yeah, I think, and during the pandemic also, I realized that arranged marriage was not be such a bad thing, because somebody told me that, ultimately two strangers meet and you can actually develop feelings as a stranger. आप प्यार में पड़ जाते हो. वैसे ही आप अगर किसी भी प्लेटफॉर्म पे या किसी के थ्रू भी मिले हो, कैसे फर्क पड़ता है, अगर वो कनेक्शन बिल्ड होना हो तो वो बिल्ड हो जाएगा. एंड आई थिंक गिवन इनफ इंटेंट एंड इनफ shiddat and the right kind of attitude towards a partner, I think anybody can grow fond of anybody, and people can actually develop spark and relationship and love after a period of time. Because the other side is also true. Not necessarily because you've been loved for 5 years, 10 years.
I know,
उसके
no, I
बाद
know.
also it'll survive, because love
ऐसा कुछ नहीं.
also has an expiry date, by the way. Spoiler alert. No matter how in love you are, if you don't have anything else apart from love, compatibility is a important point. Your shared activities is an important point. Your ambitions are actually a bigger contention. So अगर वो सारी चीजें अलाइन नहीं होती है ना, प्यार will die down one day, because प्यार is a very fleeting thing.
Yeah, true.
Respect नहीं है, अगर mutual respect नहीं है. So I think around the timelines of when we are in our phases versus very early, like 20, 21, 22 में, just getting to your first relationships, and then mid 20s, some of your friends are getting married, तो ठीक है, आपका मन करता है चलो मिल रहा है, कोई मिल रहा है, कोई है तो ठीक है करेंगे. नहीं तो कई लोग तो इनफैक्ट वो टाइमलाइन मिस पता है क्यों कर जाते हैं, बिकॉज उनके इतने गंदे ब्रेकअप्स हो रहे होते हैं कि यार वो जब क्या कहते हैं, मान लो 27 साल के होते हैं, उनकी ब्रेकअप 25 में हो गई और वो 3 साल तो रोते हुए उन्होंने निकाल दिया, दे मिस द ट्रेन. सो अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल एक्चुअली आर गोइंग थ्रू अ लॉट ऑफ टर्मोइल बिकॉज nobody thinks of the consequences of things that will happen. One of the reasons that people ask me, yaar, Auric, why are you doing this podcast? Why are you building a, something else around the whole people dating and all of that thing? And I tell them that, yeah, this has consequences on me as well. If everybody in society is broken, and if everybody is so judgmental, and everybody is not so open about who they want as partners, I am going to end up alone all by myself, because I'm not a lying, conniving piece of shit. I'm not a manipulating piece of shit कि भाई किसी को पाने के लिए मैं पालूं. I want somebody to come as pure and as open as they can be. मतलब, but that's getting more and more difficult, because
Yeah.
Everybody's breaking everybody's heart left, right, and center. So yeah.
Yeah, true.
Hmm. So how is this whole dating app thing changing how we look at relationships in our early 20s versus our late 20s?
पता नहीं मुझे honestly नहीं difference दिख रहा है, and sometimes I'm like, and there's a joke around this कि which says, and no offense to Rohit's, but Rohit is 34 and his Bumble bio still reads looking for a casual relationship. भाई कब तक करना है तुझे casual, like settle कर ले भाई, कभी serious हो जा. So that is what I'm saying कि लोग के साथ में वही कर रहे थे, somehow मैं 30s में भी लोगों को वही हरकतें करते हुए देख रही हूँ, कुछ को, obviously not everybody, but the dating apps are freaking bad man, it's bad out there. मुझे लगता है वो जो हमारे पेरेंट्स बोला करते थे कि यार जल्दी शादी कर लो, एंड मैंने यूज्ड टू आस्क देम क्यों, दे लाइक अच्छे लोग निकल जाएंगे. वो हो रहा है मुझे लगता है, ऑल ऑफ द गुड पीपल आर टेकन, आई थिंक.
I kind of disagree on that, where I think that even if you, let's say, शादी करने के लिए आपने early शादी कर ली, two people in relationships or otherwise will evolve. You are not the same person you were 5 years ago or 10 years ago. You will definitely
Yeah.
not be the same person 5 years down the line, right? If two people have gotten married and, let's say, 23 years old or 25 years old, and I have people I know who've gotten married very, very young as well, guys, I'm talking about, not even girls. So what I have seen is that अगर आप में वो emotional maturity है तो आप कुछ भी निभा लोगे. अगर आप में वो नहीं है ना, आप you will change as people because of, you know, your social media feed, because of your cultures, because of, you know, people around you, your corporate cultures. What happens is that you will grow in different directions, and if you don't have the emotional maturity, you can't build bridges to maintain a relationship. And maybe at 25 you were supremely in love, at 35 you'll kill each other and want to get out of a relationship, right? So that is also true. It's just that you have to talk about these things and you have to actually build yourself to be a good person so that the other person can also live with you, right? It's not about कि मेरे को अपने पार्टनर में ये सारी चीजें चाहिए. फर्स्ट चीज कि तुम भी वो चीज हो कि नहीं. इनफैक्ट मेरी एक बहुत फनी लड़ाई हो गई थी, वेर अ वुमन गॉट मैड एट मी. शी इज लाइक, और एक मुझे तो यार शिव जी जैसा पति चाहिए, ही सच अ नाइस पर्सन, उन्होंने यू नो पार्वती माँ के लिए या सती जी के लिए इतना वो करा, ही क्राइड एंड ही इज, यू नो, वो करते हैं. I said, हाँ ठीक है, is very shant and all of those things, when he's in love and all of that is fine. But can you also willing to, you know, take his Rudra roop or his detached roop where he's, you know, gone into, you know, his tapasya for eons and you are left all by yourself. Imagine, can you live with a partner like that? Are you Parvati enough to actually live with Shiv, right? And that is where people don't understand ki, bhai, when you're fantasizing about something in your partner, you have to understand that there are a lot of dimensions to that partner. If you don't shed all of the bad things and if you don't become a good partner yourself and a receiving partner who actually nurtures your other half, I don't think any relationship is going to survive, no matter how good and compatible you are. If you don't have a nurturing nature towards yourself, and if you don't have self love, and if you can't show that for your partner, no relationships in the future will survive.
Yeah, true,
I have a
that
prediction
I
that
agree.
most relationships in the next 5 years are gonna get supremely bad and end up in breakups because
अभी
people
भी
are
हो
also
रहा
becoming
है.
very adversarial. They're like, यार मैं चेंज नहीं होना चाहता, मैं एडजस्ट नहीं करूंगी, मैं तो एडजस्ट नहीं कर रहा यार, जाने तो क्या फर्क पड़ता है. आई थिंक दैट्स अ वेरी बैड कल्चर, राइट? पीपल
Yeah,
शुड.
I know. People are like, यार ठीक है, इसके साथ एडजस्ट नहीं हो रहा है तो क्यों मेहनत करेंगे, किसी और के साथ कर लेंगे, या नहीं करेंगे, क्या ही हो गया, इतनी क्या ही जरूरत है. तो हाँ.
Interesting. So yeah, so as a parting note on this topic, I would like to say that yes, I've come through a very long journey, a very long, hard, happy and sad journey. The ride has been very, very fun and interesting. Has been miserable also. Has been a punch in the gut as well. But I think I've grown and I've become a nicer human being than I was when in my early 20s. And that journey, I think, has happened. I would tell you that, यू नो, कहते हैं ना, एक सक्सेसफुल मैन के पीछे एक औरत का हाथ होता है, चाहे वो आपका पार्टनर हो, चाहे आपकी मदर हो, या जो भी हो, या आपकी बहन हो, फॉर दैट मैटर. आई थिंक मेन ओनली इवॉल्व इनटू नाइसर ह्यूमन बीइंग्स इफ ए आप में, मेरे को लगता है तीन ही पैरामीटर्स है जब पीपल एक्चुअली इवॉल्व एंड चेंज. अगर आप सेल्फ अवेयर हो और आप हमेशा, इफ यू वांट टू डू बेटर इन लाइफ, सो यू ऑलवेज ट्राई टू मेक योरसेल्फ बेटर, तो तब आप ऑर्गेनिकली बेटर होते रहते हो. या तो आपका कोई बहुत ही पावरफुल फ्रेंड या फीमेल फ्रेंड या गर्लफ्रेंड रही जिसने आप पे बहुत ज्यादा इम्पैक्ट करा, एंड यू रियलाइज्ड कि ओ, आई हैव टू चेंज माय वेज इफ आई हैव टू कीप पीपल लाइक दिस इन माय लाइफ, अदरवाइज यू विल नॉट चेंज. बिकॉज men, I think, do not talk about these things. They do not have a feedback mechanism. Nobody has a feedback mechanism कि भाई क्या करना चाहिए, क्या नहीं करना चाहिए. Most men are clueless. So I think those two reasons, and the third thing is, I think men are very sensitive. They think that अगर हम अपनी बातें बता देंगे और if I open up to somebody, I'll be looked down as कि यार मैं तो लड़की जैसी बातें कर रहा हूँ.
वही तो मैं कह
Men
रही
look
थी,
down on other men
हाँ.
कि भाई क्या बच्चों जैसी बातें कर रहा है, क्या लड़की जैसी बातें कर रहा है. So I think that is very
Yeah.
important to figure out that you have good support system and you have good set of friends and good influential people who will actually mold you in the right way. And I think life can be better. So I'm still hoping and I am trying to make myself better. Ki whenever that life partner arrives, I am ready to actually receive her in all the right ways, and then she sees and she's happy and she sticks around.
Yeah, that is a good thing to wish for. Amen to that. So yeah,
So yeah, that's
with
pretty much
that
it.
I think that this was as usual a good discussion. खुद को तो अच्छा बोल ही सकते हैं. ऐसी बात नहीं है. कई लोग भी सुन के बोलते हैं अच्छा है. But anyway, as long as someone relates to it. So yeah.
All right, everybody, be happy, take care, and don't get your hearts broken too often. Take care, make better decisions. Good night. Bye bye.
Good